Okay, ready to dive into something a little different this time. We're going to be tackling this article in the Judicial Times. And get this. It argues that Elon Musk could theoretically be eligible for the death penalty.
Whoa.
Yeah, I know, right? Sounds pretty extreme, right?
It definitely gets your attention, I'll say that much. But, to be clear, the author isn't saying that Musk will actually face charges. It's more of a thought experiment.
Right, like sparking a conversation about how accountable someone like Musk should be, someone with so much power.
Exactly. And the writer, John Thompson, he really doesn't hold back. He basically lays out this, like, almost unbelievable rap sheet of alleged wrongdoings across, like, all of Musk's companies.
Yeah, we're not talking about, just like parking tickets or something here. This
Mm.
is serious stuff. We're talking unsafe working conditions and even actively trying to prevent workers from unionizing at Tesla. Then there are those really disturbing accusations about animal cruelty during those Neuralink brain experiments. And then on top of all that, there are even claims of human rights violations further down the supply chain.
Yeah, and you know what's really striking? It's that these claims, they're not just in one area. Like, they cut across different industries and really make you question if there's some kind of pattern here when it comes to how these companies are run, ethically at least, from a leadership perspective.
Well, let's dive into some of the details because honestly, something is very jarring. For example, the article mentions that Tesla was fined for underreporting workplace injuries, and apparently their injury rates were way higher than the average for that whole industry. And like knowing how much Tesla emphasizes automation, it makes you wonder, like, what's actually happening on those factory floors?
Yeah, for sure. Definitely raises some concerns about their priorities and their company culture, for sure. And then you've got that racial discrimination lawsuit from one of their former employees who was awarded, get this, $137 million.
Wow.
That's a huge red flag. Like, what happened that led to such a massive payout? Clearly something went very wrong there.
137 million. It boggles the mind. But even beyond the financial aspect, this article also brings up those troubling allegations of animal cruelty that were happening over at Neuralink.
Absolutely. The article talks about a complaint filed by the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, and they're directly accusing Neuralink of really awful animal cruelty during their experiments, like monkeys dying because of botched procedures, suffering extreme pain.
It's awful.
It is. And it really highlights the fine line between pushing for scientific breakthroughs and, well, basic ethical conduct.
So we've got Tesla with these really troubling questions about their workplace environment and discrimination. And then there's Neuralink with its own ethical issues. But this article, it doesn't even stop there, right? They actually connect Tesla to some pretty bad sourcing practices. Like, I think most people know that electric car batteries use cobalt,
Right.
but I'd be willing to bet that most people have no idea where it actually comes from.
Yeah, and that's where it gets really interesting. I mean, it's so easy to just focus on electric vehicles as like, saving the planet, which is good. But this article, it pulls back the curtain a bit. Like, it points out how much Tesla relies on cobalt that comes from the Democratic Republic of Congo. And that whole region has some truly awful child labor practices in their mining industry.
Yeah, and the article makes a really direct and really disturbing connection there. It's suggesting that this big push for affordable electric cars, which on the surface sounds like a great idea, might actually be fueled by, exploitation and suffering. It really makes you think, are we as a society so eager for the next big thing that we just ignore those costs?
Yeah, that's a huge question. And it brings us right back to that question of accountability, right?
Yeah.
So if Tesla, with Musk in charge, if they know about these practices and they just look the other way, where do we draw the line? Is it any different from, say, I don't know, a company knowingly polluting a water supply or something?
Right, because both have some potentially devastating impacts on people. So how do we even begin to address something that big? I mean, is the way things are set up right now even equipped to deal with these complex issues, especially when you're talking about global supply chains and powerful people like Elon Musk?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And to be honest, the article doesn't really offer any easy answers. But it definitely challenges us to rethink how we view corporate responsibility in the 21st century. It argues that, well, the old ways of doing things might just not be enough anymore.
It's a tough pill to swallow because on one hand, you have these companies that are really pushing the boundaries of technology. But then on the other, you've got these incredibly serious accusations with very real consequences. So, I mean, how do we reconcile those two things? How can we celebrate progress without turning a blind eye to the potential costs?
And this is bigger than just Elon Musk, right? He just happens to be a very prominent example. But this article, it's like a jumping off point for a much bigger discussion. Thinking about corporate power in general, their ethical responsibilities. Like, what does real justice actually look like in the world we live in now? A world that's more and more complex every day.
Exactly. It makes you wonder, if our current systems aren't equipped to handle this, well, what are the alternatives? If not the death penalty, which even the article admits is a long shot, then what?
Yeah. And, he doesn't really offer any concrete solutions, but by putting it out there so bluntly, I mean, even using the death penalty as just a thought experiment, it forces us to confront just how big this problem really is.
Yeah.
It makes us question everything we think we know about what true accountability should look like, especially for the people who are shaping our technologies. And when you think about it, shaping the future.
It's kind of like we're at this crossroads, like on one hand, we have all this potential with AI and space exploration and everything, but like, what if the path to get there is, well, kind of messed up?
It definitely makes you think. And what's really interesting to me is how this whole thing really connects back to all of us. It's like every time we buy some new gadget, or invest in a company, or even just click on an article, it's like we're all part of this system.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's easy to get caught up in the hype of the latest and greatest Tesla or whatever Neuralink is doing. But when you really think about it, like this article forces you to ask, at what cost, right? And who's really paying the price?
That's exactly it. And honestly, that might be the most important takeaway from all of this. It's not about, like, are you pro-death penalty or not? Or even if you think Musk is guilty of all these things, it's bigger than that. It's about recognizing just how much power these companies really have and figuring out, how do we make sure that power is used responsibly? How do we even start that conversation?
So what about the people listening right now? What if they're thinking, okay, this was interesting and all, but what can I actually do?
Honestly, I think it starts with staying informed. Be a conscious consumer, and don't be afraid to ask the tough questions. Support the organizations that are out there actually trying to make a difference and hold everyone accountable, the companies and the people in charge. We all have a part to play in making sure that the future, with all this amazing technology, that it's a future where we don't have to compromise our ethics.
Well said. So to wrap things up here, I think we can all agree that Elon Musk probably isn't going to face the death penalty. And the article even says that. But really, that wasn't the point of this whole conversation, right? The real point was to throw out a really radical idea, a really provocative idea, and use that to look at some hard truths, to think about power and responsibility and what we're willing to accept, as the price of all this progress. Who gets to decide these things, and how do we hold them accountable?
It's definitely a conversation that's not going away anytime soon. And honestly, if anything, I think it's going to keep getting more and more important as technology keeps advancing.
No doubt about it. Well, this was a lot to process. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive. It was quite a ride.